But the will said, I get half of everything. Hi, Nancy Bovier here with a Gabby and NEXsteps. Today I wanted to address the issue of beneficiary designations. Actually, more specifically, I want to talk about the flip side of beneficiary designations. When people are doing their estate planning, typically the only thing that they think about is creating a will. There's an assumption that once a will is created, that your estate planning is done. Well, you've all heard me talk a lot about that, and an estate plan is not just a will. A will is the cornerstone, but it is not everything. In order to have a proper estate plan, you also have to take care of incapacity planning. So you need that enduring power of attorney, you need that medical directive. But even more important than that, you also need to take a look at the larger implications of your estate when the time comes to settle that estate. And that's where a lot of estate plans fail. There are a lot of tax implications. That final tax bill, I've spoken about that before. That's what a lot of people don't see coming. For instance, an RRSP can transfer to a surviving spouse with a tax deferral. But keep in mind, that is a tax deferral. That is not a tax elimination. So when that final spouse passes on, then that RSP is fully taxable. We have what is called a deemed disposition here in Canada. And at the time that the person passes away, all of the assets are deemed to have been sold just prior to that person passing away at fair market value. So you might think that you're passing on your $500,000 RRSP to your children, but in reality, they're going to get what is left after the estate pays that final tax bill. And that final tax bill can take half of that, if not more, depending on your tax bracket. So one of the ways to mitigate that final tax bill is to make sure that you have created beneficiary designations. What that means is on life insurance policies, on RRSPs, on various other investment products that you may have in your estate, that you name beneficiaries. Now, some of these will still trigger tax, such as an RRSP. However, there are insurance products, there are insurance tools, there are strategies that can be implemented that minimize that tax burden. In most cases, insurance products will pass on outside of probate, outside of the will, and there will be no tax implication, there will be no tax burden on the estate. But that has to be structured very carefully, so make sure that you're getting proper advice in that area. Make sure that you speak to a proper tax advisor, a proper financial advisor, and make sure that you're doing things structured and properly so that there aren't those surprises. But what happens when the will states that all of the beneficiaries will be treated equally and they'll all share in the residue of the estate? Well, that's where some of this planning can also be nuanced and also needs careful consideration. If you have 3 children and you name one child as the sole beneficiary of an insurance policy, and maybe you have named another child as the beneficiary of a property that you own, those beneficiaries will receive that, which may create unintended consequences for your surviving beneficiaries. In that case, they're not going to be treated equally. If the one child receives a property and another child receives an insurance policy payout, what is left in the estate, if it's still to be shared equally, that third child may end up getting a fraction of what those other children have received. And the executor can end up with a lot of pressure on them. The executor can end up being blamed for the unfair distribution of assets when really the executor has no authority to change anything. The will is a legal document. They have to manage the estate. They have to make sure that bills are paid. They have to make sure taxes are paid. They have to make sure that the other assets are contained and distributed properly. But they are completely unable to change any of those other designations. There can be a lot of pressure. That can be a lot of stress on the executor. And in most cases, the executor ends up being a family member. It can cause huge estrangement. It can cause huge family dynamic issues that may never be able to be healed. I'm a certified executor advisor. I help people spot those areas that things might be missing in their estate plan. I help them identify those gaps between the plan and the administration. So if you do have a plan in place and you'd like it reviewed, I can help you with that. If you haven't yet got your plan in place, that's a perfect time to start. Let's take a look at it. Let's make sure that it's structured properly right from the start. I've got an article on my website that goes into more detail about this. The link is over in the description box. I invite you to check it out, read a little bit more, and reach out to me if there's any questions or any areas that you think that I can help you. Thanks very much for joining me this time. I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Bye for now.